Hi, everybody. I'm Marcus Aurelius Anderson. I'm the author of The Gift of Adversity, mindset coach, TEDx speaker, coach to executives, leaders, and CEOs. And on today's show, I'm going to be talking with Dov about the gift of adversity and how the guy that flips you off in traffic is probably your best teacher. Stay tuned.
Congratulations! You are tuned into Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Show, the #1 podcast for Fortune 500 executives and those who are dedicated to creating a quantum leap in leadership. Your host, Dov Baron, is the founder of FullMontyLeadership.com. He's an executive mentor to leaders like you, a contributing writer for Entrepreneur Magazine, CEO World, and he's been featured on CNN, Fox, CBS, and many other notable sites. Dov Baron is an international business speaker who was named by Inc. magazine as one of the top 100 leadership speakers to hire. Now, over to Dov Baron.
Welcome, dear friends, fans, and fellow aficionados of leadership excellence. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives, part of the Full Monty interview series. I'm your host, Dov Baron, founder of Full Monty Leadership, and I'm here to assist you tapping into your deep greatness so you can reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, profit in your business, your life, and your leadership impact. Today, we're going to be taking an insider look at life after a brush with death. Is there a gift of adversity? Remember, you can now chat about this episode or any of our past episodes in our Facebook group by simply going to Dov Baron's Leadership and Loyalty Podcast in Facebook. There you can chat about this episode or any past episode with other listeners. If you're a new listener, new viewer, thank you for joining us. Strap yourself in. We're about to go full Monty. Remember, you can now find us on iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, or wherever you tune into your podcast. We always need your help in staying relevant, so please go on over to iTunes. Rate, review, and subscribe to the show. When you do, go back onto that Facebook group, Leadership and Loyalty Tips for Executives, and tell us. Maybe we'll give you a shout out right here on the live show. You can also catch us on traditional radio stations across the United States every Monday and Thursday on stations from Las Vegas all the way to Georgia, all the way to Wisconsin. Also, you can find us on Roku TV, where there's over 100,000 subscribers. And if you're a regular listener, big thank you to you for making us the #1 podcast globally for Fortune 500 listeners. Now, with a potential reach of 2.5 to 4 million listeners for every single show, we're honored and grateful to be cited by Inc.com as the #1 podcast to make you a better leader. By the way, you can listen to us on Google Home and Alexa by simply saying, play Dov Baron podcast. Again, thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. All right, let's strip it down and dive right in. As a leader, whether you are a CEO, someone in the C-suite, a sales leader, entrepreneur, a leader in any capacity, you know that you can have a perfect plan. You can have a perfect execution of that plan. But what happens when the feces hits the fan? Do you crawl into a hole and just stay there? Or do you allow it to catapult you out into something else, something bigger, something greater than a perfect plan? If so, how do you do that? Well, stay tuned because you're about to find out. Our guest today on this episode is Marcus Aurelius Anderson. That's a powerful name. He's a best-selling author, TEDx speaker, keynote speaker, mindset coach, and leader to leaders, CEOs, and coaches. While preparing to deploy for the U.S. Army, Marcus Aurelius Anderson suffered a severe spinal injury that left him paralyzed. After dying on the operating table twice, the surgeon saved his life, but told him he would never walk again. Having no other option, Marcus started doing some brutally honest soul searching, looking for the lessons that he learned from his injury. Once he started seeing his adversity as a gift instead of as a curse, something miraculous began to happen. Marcus now speaks, writes, and inspires and coaches others to overcome their own adversities, to actualize their personal definition of success. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome to the stage, Marcus Aurelius Anderson!
The crowd goes wild. Thank you so much, my friend.
The crowd goes wild.
Sit down, everyone. Sit down. We're not going to be able to get through this if you guys don't calm down a little bit, please.
It's good to have you, mate. It's good to have you on the show. And just sort of give everybody a bit of bit of background. You and I met, it's coming on a year already. It's coming on a year ago. We were both at a new media event in San Diego, and there was an instant connection between the two of us. For all kinds of reasons, reasons like martial arts, reasons like having died. We had a lot in common. So, like I said in the beginning, you suffered a severe spinal injury that left you paralyzed, and you died on the operating table twice. Tell us a little bit about who you were before what I call your fall, before that sort of devastating event that was about to wake you up. Who was pre-injury Marcus?
Yes, the pre-injury Marcus. I had done different things in college. I had done different trainings. I was in criminal justice initially, and as I was about to finish that degree, I realized that wasn't going to be satisfying for me. I went to a chiropractor that helped me from a martial art injury, as we were discussing, and that helped me a lot. I loved the holistic ideology and philosophy. And I said, so what does it take to be a chiropractor? You just take a weekend seminar or something? And he says, no, it's a doctorate.
Could you insult me a little more, please? I think the fee just went up.
That's what it was. It tripled. And, but I really loved the idea. So I went 180 and went into chiropractic. And that really was a good fit for me. And at the same time, also, I moved to a school in Atlanta that was the best chiropractic school that I could find. I was married at the time. So I'm taking 25 hours of doctorate level courses. I'm bartending. I'm trying to do so much stuff because I'm trying to prepare for a practice, a family, the white picket fence, everything. But as we understand, there's what we plan and then there's what happens in life. I got divorced, which was a big punch to the face. And then my great uncle, who was a big role model for me, he was in Vietnam Special Forces, very positive role model for me. He passed away as well. So that was a devastating 1-2 punch for me. And that really made me come down to brass tacks and start looking at my life and wondering, am I doing this for myself? Am I doing this for other people? And after I saw my great uncle's funeral, they had all this regalia, 21 gun salute. And I was pretty stoic at the time until they folded the flag up and gave it to my great aunt. And they started playing taps. And then I lost it. I was a blubbering mess. But I realized that I had always had excuses not to do things. And so I'm divorced. I have no kids. I can just stop school if I want. And I went to go join the military. So at 38 years old, I walked into the recruiting office.
So you were 38 years old.
Yes.
You've just got divorced. You've walked away from chiropractic school as well.
Yes.
And you go to join the military. Isn't that when people are leaving the military?
It absolutely is. Most people are trying to get out after they do their 20 years there. And that's what happened when I talked to the recruiter. I said, what's the age limit? He says 35. So I go to turn and leave. And he says, well, how old are you? And I told him, and he says, well, come and talk to me. What's your motivation for this? So I told him my story. He asked me if I was smart. And I said, well, I don't know. I'm talking to you at 38 years old. You tell me if I'm smart or not. But I did an ASVAB, which is a placement test, did really well on that because of my education, took a physicality PT test. I crushed that as well. He's like, listen, you're a natural leader. You're 38. You're in great shape and you're incredibly intelligent. He said, you can do whatever you want in the Army. I said, okay, I want to join the infantry. And he's like, wait a minute. You don't get it. You have a degree. You could be an officer. You could do all these things. And I said, you don't get it. This is what I want. And if this is not what I get, then I'm just going to turn around and take another path. So he signed the release and slid it over to me. And he said, hey, it's your life. And 6 months later, I'm getting off the bus at basic training, getting yelled at by drill sergeants that are.
Why did you want to be in infantry?
I wanted to follow the same steps as my great uncle. And I knew that as an officer, I wouldn't be able to get in the trenches and really do a lot. And the martial arts, that warrior spirit was always there. And frankly, I needed a challenge because I was kind of being mediocre. So I embraced that challenge, and it was. All my drill sergeants are younger than I am. The guys that I'm in basic with are half my age. And the first 2 weeks was a big challenge for me because even younger guys were breaking their ankles, falling down, breaking their wrist. all that stuff, because the first few weeks are not a picnic by any stretch of the imagination.
Right.
But what saved me was my mindset and my experience and my mental resilience. And once I realized that my body wasn't going to let me down, I continued to push, and that's when I excelled.
So here you are in basic training. You've come through that. You're knocking out guys who are much younger than you, kind of the old fart on the team, and you're still showing up at the top level because it's, you're enjoying the challenge. I get that you said, the death of your uncle, your great uncle, and the realization that you were actually free and you could do whatever you wanted to do. Who was the guy? That's what I'm trying to understand. Who were you? How did you look at the world? Who was the guy who was entering into that? Because it sounds like, if I may, and I don't mean to be rude, but it sounds like a kind of a midlife crisis. A 38-year-old going to do a 20-year-old's job. You could have bought some Coke and a convertible Corvette. Right? I mean, it's not, because and those kinds of things do bring those on for human beings. So it sounds like there's some kind of ideological internal turmoil going on. Tell us about that. That's what I'm trying to understand here. That driver.
Of course, the thing was, through martial arts, we understand that there's a lot of plateaus, but there's not limits. That's what Bruce Lee always said. Mm-hmm. And I could feel that I had plateaued in this mediocrity. Mm-hmm. I was doing just enough to get by. I was doing things that other people thought was important, but I realized that it wasn't what I wanted. And when I got slapped in the face with what happened with life, that's really when I started to wake up and look around and say, there's all these other things that I could be doing. And I think that it was just the fact that my great uncle passed when he did that made me realize that I'd always wanted to serve. And if I was going to serve, this was my only opportunity to do it. And if I was going to make the most of what I had in any potential, I had to attack this and embrace it for what it was. I knew it was going to be difficult. I knew there was going to be a lot of hardship. But the goal was to go there, serve my country for 4 years, come back, finish my chiropractic degree, and then go serve my community with my hands.
Right.
And like I said, there's what we hope will happen, there's what we fear will happen, and there's what really happens.
So you've now gone through basic training, you're ready to go, you're about to be deployed. Walk us through what happens next.
So as we're preparing to deploy, they keep pushing our deployment back. But in the military, if you have more time, that just means you just click up the training intensity. It doesn't mean that you slow down. It means you click it up. Because every time you have that objective, you know that the more you can train, the more you can study, the more you can be physically prepared, the better your opportunity, not only for you, but for your team to come back alive. Mm-hmm. And Afghanistan is a very, dangerous place, obviously. So as we were preparing to deploy, I was in upstate New York. It's February, it's very cold. And I'm starting to get like a little bit of numbness on my hands and my feet whenever we would do a run or a ruck march or doing pull-ups. But my mentality, I just push it away. I have these objectives. This is what I'm doing. My primary goal is to deploy. But as the deployment started getting more and more difficult, I started having a harder time moving. And then eventually one morning I wake up and I cannot move. I try to roll out of bed and my neck will articulate a little bit, but my body won't. My body will not log roll out. And this is where the chiropractic is a blessing and a curse. Mm-hmm. I know that there's something neurologically going on. So I do a quick eval of myself and I'm like, well, either I'm really sore or I'm having a serious neurological deficiency here.
Sure.
And it turns out it was the second one. And it was my worst nightmare realized. If you've ever had a nightmare where you can't move or you're screaming and you're stuck, that's exactly what I had. And that's whenever they rushed me to the hospital and things changed took a big turn.
So, like we talked about, you've studied chiropractic, so you are aware of your body. How long had you been doing martial arts by then?
I've been doing it for over 30 years. I started doing it when I was 11. So
right. So you've got martial arts, more than 20 years of martial arts in you. So you're aware of your body. You're aware of those things. Like you said, it's a freaking nightmare. So you're in the bed, you can't move. I'm assuming somebody comes and shouts at you and says, "Get the hell up."
Yes, that's exactly what it was.
They don't come and go, "Honey, it's time for work."
Are you going to come to formation or not?
Yeah. Your pancakes are almost gonna. You don't want your pancakes to go cold.
Yeah, and I wasn't the kind of guy that would mess around. So when they be on the door and I tell them I can't move, I'm yelling. They're like, okay, so they come get me. They take me down to the hospital, and here's how silly it was. In my mind, as a warrior or as a soldier, I kept thinking, man, I hope this doesn't take long. I hope they can just give me a shot or give me some medication, because I have to go back and get ready to deploy. My guys are waiting for me. People are counting on me. But as they bring me in and they had the lights on me and they're poking and prodding me and doing all these tests, as they're running down in the gurney, it becomes pretty obvious that this is a lot more serious than I thought it was. And after the MRI, they said, well, we're going to prep you. And I was like, for what? And they said, well, for surgery, stupid. What do you think?
Mm-hmm.
And I don't have a choice at that point. So I just have to kind of go with it. And, I hadn't been in the hospital really. I mean, I had bumps and bruises and stitches, but nothing really that serious. So I'm scared beyond belief. And within, 2 hours, I've been from waking up paralyzed to now this is going to happen. So it was a roller coaster, to say the least.
And I find something fascinating in for people watching, people who listen to this show, people who are familiar with you, familiar with me, probably also familiar with people like Dave Goggins, and as much as I love and admire the man and what he's done, I think it's a little dangerous and because it's training people to ignore the pain. And I think that's always, what he's done is amazing. I tip my hat. But I think it's terrible advice, because those of us like you, like me, we just go, yeah, well, fuck it, I'll soldier on. And, that's the stuff we do. And we ignore the signs. And the signs are there for a reason. Like, it may say stop and we may come to a rolling stop rather than actually putting our foot down. But for many of us like you and I, we just go, oh no, blast through it. We do the Goggins thing and we end up in a severe problem. You ignored that numbness in your fingers, the numbness in your feet, and that probably pushed you to beyond a limit that you probably should have paid much greater attention to. So you're on the table and they're operating on you. Is it a trapped nerve? What is it?
What it was is a disc in my neck had ruptured, C5. And when that disc ruptured, it compressed my spinal cord. Mm-hmm. And the spinal cord is almost like a hose. So if you step on a hose, water can't go through. And the spinal cord is really delicate. So what they did is they went in, they removed all that disc and all that debris, stuck a bunch of metal in my neck to stabilize it. And they say, listen, there's a lot of neurological damage here. So if you're going to walk, it would have happened right after the surgery. But we don't expect you to walk. As a matter of fact, you're not going to walk. So don't even have that hope. Just start wrapping your mind around the idea that this is what you're going to be left with and start figuring out what you want to do next. And as a male, from that physicality, that's your definition of existence. And so to go from this high, crazy level of a soldier to a person who can't even take care of themselves, it's devastating. It's beyond devastating. There's not even words for how I felt. I was completely crushed.
Now, you died twice on the table. You have no memory of that, Ro, I'm assuming?
What I found, I had a nurse ask me about it, and she asked me what I saw. And what I saw was compelling and scary and motivating. It was just complete darkness, and I felt very cold.
See, now that's fascinating, right? Because I've talked about my experience, because I died 5 times in my process, and people say, oh, did you see the light? Was your grandmother waiting for you on the other side? Was the, and I'm like, shit, no. And they're like, what do you mean? I go, I don't know about anybody else, but for me, it was very dark. It was magnetic. It was pulling me towards that darkness. And I had a sense, whatever that means, of my body. And I knew with like everything I had, that warrior part of me was like, get the hell back there. And actually, one of the times when I died was in my hospital bed, and my young 14-year-old daughter was sitting by the bed, I was just in Australia. I just came back and she was telling me about it. And we were talking about it again. And she said, yeah, she goes, it was like a movie because everything in the hospital went quiet. She goes, and she saw what looked like this ethereal smoke rise from me. And she just said, automatically, she just said, no, out loud. And she goes, it went, whew. Wow. And I opened my eyes. Right? That's what she said happened, right? Of course, I don't remember that, but I remember the other fight part of like just trying to get back in the body. So that you remember that same thing, that you got to get back there.
Yes.
So now you're back. You can't, officially can't walk. How do you, I said in the introduction, that brought you to a place of really looking at you. How was that the shift? Because very often, you and I talked about this when we met in San Diego, people think the event changes you, and it's a bullshit thing to think, because the event doesn't change us. It doesn't change us. There's a process. So the event is, okay, I'm now unable to walk. That's the event. I've fallen off a mountain. That's the event. I'm hospitalized, and I also was not supposed to walk. That's the event. It's not the change. There's this process of thinking. Talk to us about what happened for you that was the transformation of your being.
Absolutely. And that's what a lot of people, like you said, they want to fast forward to, you went from here to here. But like you said, that process, the process for me was, I was angry. I was livid. I had amazing amounts of regret. I turned 40 years old in a bed, unable to move, paralyzed. So when most people at 40 are celebrating all these achievements and they're happy and they have kids and they have an amazing business, I had none of that. And that was a big kick in the ass, because I was like, holy shit, what have I done? And I looked at all the opportunities that I've been given, and I felt like God or the universe or whatever you believe in, I felt like I'd been slapped, as if it's like, listen, we gave you 40 years. We gave you every potential, all this talent, all this time, all these capacities, and you didn't do anything with it. So you know what? We're taking it back, because if you were going to do something, you would have done it by now. 40 years is plenty of time to do something. And that's how I felt. And I was just mad at myself. And we're all going to have regrets. I get it. There's going to be regrets, but there's going to be like small regrets, like wishing you spent more time overseas traveling, or there's going to be regrets like what I had, where it was like, why didn't I do more? Why didn't I push myself more? I know that I'm capable of so much more. I was just letting myself, I was doing what everybody else was doing. I was doing, like I said, enough to get by, being mediocre, and not actualizing any of my potential. So that anger and that depression, I was suicidal, literally, but I couldn't even act on it. So I felt like the ultimate victim in a lot of ways.
Oh yeah, of course.
It's like, okay, at least I can take my own. No, I couldn't even do that. So they would come in, they would turn on Netflix, they would give me medications, and they would leave. Eventually I just said, don't even turn on Netflix. Give me meds if you have to, because I can't control it because they're putting it in my IV. Now I just have to sit here and look at this. And all of these teachings, all this philosophical stuff I learned from the martial arts and Stoicism and Taoism and Zen, it came rushing back to me, and it made me even madder, because it sounded like a bunch of flowery bullshit. Right?
Yeah, indeed.
It's not pragmatic. It's all like, oh, where's the opportunity? And I'm like, fuck, no, I can't. That's not helping me right now. How am I going to get beyond?
I'll wipe my own ass.
That's,
thinking about quotes from Buddha is not changing me.
It's not changing any of this. And that's why I was trying to figure out something pragmatic. So for 3 months, I was just consumed by anger, just livid. And then eventually I realized that the anger wasn't serving me. It was inhibiting my ability to heal. It was slowing me down. And so I wanted desperately to walk, but I knew that there was the reason why this was happening to me was there was something I was missing. There was an opportunity that I had to figure out, what was it?
Right.
Did a lot of searching. Finally, what I did was I took myself out of the equation. I stopped thinking about me, and I. And I thought, who else could have benefited from what happened to me? So if I'd have been deployed with the infantry at the time in Afghanistan, for every one man who was injured, it takes 2 men to pull him to safety.
Right.
So if I'd have been injured over there, because in my mind, this would have happened irrespective of where I was.
Right.
So if that were the case, I would have put my team in danger, my squad in danger, the medical team, the Chinook helicopter, that's a big target in a war zone. In all, I was able to itemize that there were over 24 people whose lives would have been put in harm's way if I'd have suffered this injury while I was deployed. And for the first time in 3 months, I literally said, wow, I'm lucky. And it was a surprise to even hear that come out of my mouth.
I'm sure.
But it gave me that crazy perspective to realize, wow, I am lucky because now nobody else died. Nobody else is injured. And once I had that little corner of foundation of gratitude, I started to try to build on it. And I was like, I'm grateful for these people that are taking care of me. I'm grateful of this bed. I'm grateful of the room that I may never leave. And the thing is, okay, you and I both know this. Gratitude's a buzzword. Everybody talks about it. Oh yeah. And they have this very passive
Hashtag gratitude.
Hashtag gratitude. They have this very passive, oh, you know, their life is falling apart because they won't act and they won't take responsibility, but they're like, oh, but I'm grateful. But gratitude is not passive. It is active. It is a verb. You have to go out and show that you are grateful, and your actions will reflect that. I don't have to tell you I'm grateful. You can see what I do every single day of my life. That's the idea. So the idea is being grateful is fantastic. And it's easy to be grateful when everything's going great in your life. But when the feces hits the fan, as you say, are you grateful? Can you figure out where that gratitude is? And if you can learn to be grateful for everything in your life, both the good and the bad, now no matter what happens in your life, you're bulletproof. Because now the good things will encourage you to remember those good things and to continue doing that, while the bad stuff will remind you of what you need to get better on. And the reality is, for better or worse, pain and discomfort are the best teachers.
So is what you just gave us the definitive point of the book?
It's the definitive point of where, once I started taking radical responsibility and having 360 gratitude, genuine gratitude for everything, once I actually did that, a week and a half after that, I started getting feeling back in my fingers and my toes.
That's fascinating.
So I don't, nothing else changed other than just the way I thought about it. I've had people say, well, maybe you were misdiagnosed. I don't know, maybe, but if you're in that position and you were as desperate as I was, you will do anything in your power, especially when it's limited, to do anything to make you move forward. And for me, the only thing I could change was the way I thought about it, my perspective of what was going on, and have real gratitude as opposed to fake bullshit gratitude that candy coats everything and justifies a victimized mentality.
Well, let's just go to that for a minute, because I remember when I was in the shit with all that, and I remember filled with rage and depression and all those kinds of things. And I remember somebody saying to me, be grateful. And I wanted to punch him in the face.
Yep.
And then after they landed on the floor, kick him a couple of times. You know, I mean, that, because, you know, telling me to be grateful when I feel like I'm a victim actually doesn't help. And this is the piece I want you to help our viewers and our listeners with, because, you know, as I often talk about, my fall was literal off a mountain. Your fall was, you know, this crushed vertebrae, the spinal damage, etc. But it could have been a divorce. You know, you and I always say my fall was, as you and I talked about, was my fourth fall. It wasn't my first. And you had several falls. You know, you had a divorce. You know, you had several other falls. The death of the great uncle. These are all falls. They're all there, moving us into a direction to pay attention. And when we go through a fall, it is very difficult, particularly when we're in the depressive side of it, which is actually part of the natural evolution of it, to feel grateful. Try to help our viewers, our listeners, grasp this idea. Because I love what you're saying. I agree with you fully that gratitude is a verb. It's an action. But I'm putting myself back there and remembering that if somebody has said to me, act grateful, again, that's just like fuel my freaking rage. Like, yeah. I'm pissed. Fuck you. You don't know what it's like. You have no idea what I feel like, what I'm going through. How do we get somebody to shift to that?
That's what happens in my TEDx talk. I try to talk about it. And, you know, Buddha says, I'm a finger pointing at the moon. You know, don't look at me, look at what I'm trying to point out. So no matter who you are right now, somebody would give anything to have the things that you and I are taking for granted this moment. Right. When people are at the Starbucks and they're complaining that there's no Wi-Fi or their coffee's not hot enough, those are first world problems.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one way you can do it, is to just look at it and say, well, there's a lot of people that would be grateful to have what you have, even though you don't think you have much. If that's too much of a first world shaming for you, the other thing that I give people is I called it an adversity scale. So on 10 of the scale is the worst thing you've ever encountered in your life. And then at 0 is heaven on earth. So whatever you're going through right now, if you can step back and take a really honest look at that from a third person perspective and say, okay, on this scale, where am I right now? And most of the time, if we're really honest, it's usually a 2 or a 3.
Mm-hmm.
And what that does is that does two things. One, that shows you that you should be grateful for where you are. But 2, it shows you that if you have a 3 on that scale, there's still 7 more levels that you are capable of, so that you could get that much more out of what you're doing right now. And if what you're facing right now is the most difficult thing you've ever encountered, be grateful for that, because that is the thing that will force you to evolve. That will be your catalyst to turn into the person who can overcome what you're facing. So in business and life and any of this stuff, necessity is the mother of invention. And for better or for worse, adversity offers us no other choice. And when there's no other choice, the choice is simple. You move forward.
Yeah. And this is I think is so great about your book and about your presentation and you as a human being, is that this understanding. And I'm always cautious with it because, again, you and I both know it's different philosophically than it. We both studied religious philosophies and wisdoms from the East and on all those things, and we both had this experience. And it's, you and I both know, I'm in my hospital bed and being told I might not be able to walk, more chance than you. You were told you would never walk. We both have had death experiences and feeling like a freaking victim, and both knowing all the philosophy and going, what bullshit. I mean, I can remember being mad at God, in the form that I knew it, like, you piece of shit, here I am, I think I've been a decent person, and look at this, and getting that, I think about a hard-headed warrior type like you and me, even the idea of be grateful is infuriating. And for me, this is what helped me. Was I remember somebody, a very good friend of mine, saying, what you can be grateful for? And I was like, honestly, I'm really trying. And, he's like, well, your breath, can you be grateful for that? Philosophically, theoretically, absolutely. Emotionally, no. And there's a great difference between that. And you brought it to the next piece, which helped me, and I'm not sure it will help anybody else, and that was the transference of it not being about me. And the transference was, for me, like you, we're both driven from service, which is, how could this serve someone else? And I'm like, I've always been in service of everybody else, my anger response. I mean, and why isn't it about me? And this is about me, and I need to take care of me, and I haven't taken care of me, and maybe that's what this is about. And that was certainly true as well. I didn't take enough care of me. But it was the piece around who could benefit from knowing this experience, not going through it, but knowing it. And that question of how is this in service of was the transformation for me. Is that something you recommend, or do you have a different way of looking at it?
No, I absolutely agree. That resonates with me. And that's the truth. It's really impossible for us to see in the heat of battle what the lesson is.
Mm-hmm.
We have to have perspective. We have to be able to go beyond it and be able to look through it and then look back at it, because again, we don't have that luxury of being philosophical when we're in it. And we can try, but we are not equipped mentally at that time. It's almost like when you're in a fight, the adrenaline is firing, your sympathetic nervous system is going. You can't have higher motor function. You can't think. It's too late. So that's why this is so important to have this mentality before you get into any of this stuff because let's be honest, a lot of people, they avoid danger, and that's good. That's what we need to do. But there's a lot to be learned from that. And so even when I tell this message about adversity being a gift, you and I can talk about this all day and we can wax poetic philosophically about it. But until that person actually puts themselves in some place where they are facing some sort of adversity, they're never going to get there. And what I recommend is for people to have micro adversities, because it's
there you go. Stop. I want people to get that, because I think that is powerful and important, because we live in a stupid ass polarized world where you've got people who want to wrap themselves in freaking bubble wrap and shove cotton balls in their ears so that nobody can ever offend them, and nothing can ever hurt them, and they want to be so protective of themselves and their children that their children, grow up without spines of any kind, emotional or physical, or on the other side, they're the Dave Goggins, which is like anything and everything, and I will power through, and my leg is shattered, but I'm going to run a marathon. I'm like, okay, is there something in the middle maybe that we could order? Is there a little chicken on the menu? Like, what is in the middle here, right? And that's why I love what you just said. So go into micro adversities for us, because I think this is a lesson that anybody can get. It can calm the lunatic who's running with a fractured leg, and it can nudge forward the snowflakes of life into just like, hey, get a little more grit.
That's exactly it. We have to think of it as almost like resilience, like lifting weights. I can't pick up 400 pounds off the ground the first time. I mean, some people may be able to, but I couldn't. I had to work up to it, and I can't do it now, obviously, but that's the idea. So, and doing the micro adversities are so important, and it can be something as simple as listening to a show that you don't agree with to understand, why am I disagreeing with this? Why is this really hurting me? This isn't hurting me. If it's cold outside, maybe not wear your jacket when you walk from your car to your office. It's not going to kill you. It shows you that you're strong. If I fast, and that fasting helps me realize that my stomach doesn't control me, my mind does. Mm-hmm. And even taking the stairs instead of the escalator, simple things like that. These small things will translate into the rest of your life. It's that small decision of discipline and then moving forward with it that will bleed over into everything else you do. And now if you have that discipline there, you can have discipline in business, discipline in your relationship, discipline in all these things. But if you can't establish it in one area, it will never be able to translate. And here's the big thing. If you don't start doing this now, when you actually run into some big adversity in your life, you will be ill-equipped. And that's where most people shut down. They stay right here. So when you see people that hit adversity, a lot of them stay right there and they're angry. But if you learn the lesson from adversity, your empathy will increase exponentially. But if you don't, you will just stay right there and you will be bitter for the rest of your life. And of course, nobody's going to want to be around that. Nobody's going to put up with it. And all of a sudden you will just continue to corroborate that victim mentality and see blah, 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 blah. And it's a vicious cycle.
And that's so very well said, because so often, I mean, you and I both know this because we've had experiences with this, but how often do we meet somebody and we go, what a wonderful person. Like, they're so kind and caring and generous and insightful. And you realize, holy crap, their life was shit. Yes. Right?
Yes.
And you take somebody in a parallel universe who's gone through the same thing, who said, I'm a victim, and they stayed a victim.
Yes.
And they're bitter and mean and cruel and short-tempered and all those kinds of things. Same thing happened. But when we embrace the adversity, not create it, I want to get people clear, not create it, but embrace it. And you create those micros, as you said, by taking the little risks and moving a little forward. When you do that, you learn empathy. Listen, I've got a ton of empathy for the guy who doesn't ask a girl to dance because I was terrified. I was horrible as a single bloke. I never asked girls out. I only went out with girls who asked me out because I was a chicken shit. And I never knew how to do it. And it wasn't until I was able to swallow and just go, okay, I gotta ask this girl out. And that gave me not only the courage to do it and actually get better at it, but it also gives me the thing in my head now is like, oh, I look at this guy and I think, well, you're good looking. It'd be easy for you to ask girls out. Mistake. No, that's not true. So it gave me compassion. It gives me empathy. And so it can be, as you say, it can be in the smallest things, the micro of crawling over to ask across a room to say to somebody, can I have your phone number, can feel like crawling over broken glass, can feel like you're a boot camp in the military, depending, because I've always said, and I really believe this, that courage is subjective.
Mm-hmm.
If you watch, if you ask Dave Goggins to climb that mountain, there's no courage in it. It's okay. And you go do it, because that's the kind of shit he does, right? If you ask, I've forgotten his name now, the ice guy.
Wim Hof.
Yeah, Wim Hof. You ask him to go, why don't you go for a swim in that frozen water? He goes, sure. Yeah, nice. And a bit of a relaxing afternoon. And he goes for a swim. But he asked me to get in that water. That would take enormous courage.
That's it.
I walked into the waters of Canada in August after rising from Australia with my surfboard under my arm to go surfing here, got into the ankles, turned around and walked away. And people go, where are you going to go? I ain't getting in that shit. It's too cold. Right? Courage is entirely subjective. And you've got to be willing. And I love what you're saying here, because it's important. Because if you're not careful, and this is something that you and I had in common so to the bone, and that is, we looked good before the fall. Mm-hmm. We were the people that other people looked at and went, you're so courageous, you're so powerful, you're so driven. And we were like, not really. Because it was easy for us. And it's not until that great adversity that gave us the opportunity to say, where's the real challenge? Because the real challenge is not going to boot camp at 38. The real challenge is not me standing on a stage and speaking to those people. The real challenge is walking across the room and asking that girl out. The real challenge is saying, have I missed the bus on what my life is really about? It's the questions that other people don't know. And that's what I love about your message about the gift of adversity. It's what I love about your book. And you talk about being, and I really love this. You talked about being, what was it you said? The Bruce Lee of, what is it?
The Bruce Lee of mindset.
Of maximizing mindset. Talk to us about what that really means for you.
You and I are both big Bruce Lee fans. And
absolutely.
In 32 years on this earth, he revolutionized so many things, especially at a time when, if you wanted to read a book back then, it was an analog book and you had to read it, and you couldn't Google it. You couldn't have Amazon send it to you the next day. You had to actively go out and do these things. And he lived his life to the maximum, getting so much out of it. He ruptured any kind of philosophical or religious or martial artistic dogma, because he's like, I'm a Chinese guy. I'm going to teach whoever I want. His first student was black. You don't do that back then. Yet he was unbound by it. He said, my only limitation is my lack of limitations. He understood all these things. And his idea of absorbing what is useful, discarding what is useless, and adding what is specifically your own. Again, he truly embodied these philosophical ideas. He didn't just sit there and write them down and make them look pretty. He was doing it. You're the leadership expert in all these fields. And you and I know that if you're not leading by example, you're not really leading. You're simply setting a bad example. And a lot of people like to tell people what to do. But again, if I want to learn about martial arts and Bruce Lee's alive, that's the guy you want to go to. So I'm trying to emulate that in all that I do. So when I coach, whether it be an executive or whether it be a team or whether it be a person, we're going through and we're looking at these things and looking at these deals that they make with themselves, or these lies that they tell themselves to try to corroborate their excuse to stop them from doing these things. And like you said, there is a fine line. Adversity is relative. It's not a competition, and it's all based on what we run into. But adversity is an inevitability as well. So if you want to move forward in your life and you want to do anything above average at all, understand that it's going to be par for the course. And if you're not pushing yourself and you're not uncomfortable, you're not asking enough of yourself. And Bruce Lee was doing that every day in everything that he did.
And one of the things you talked about is absorbing, the knowledge. You talked about that with Bruce Lee, but you talk about absorbing knowledge regardless of the source. Yes. Tell us what you mean by that. I find that very fascinating.
I'm glad you brought that up, because a lot of people, they gloss over that. So if there's a person that I don't like and they say something, there's a part of us that I can read you a quote, and if I told you it was from Oprah Winfrey, you may love it. But if I told you it was from Hitler, it may smack you in the face, and then all of a sudden now you're judging yourself and you're trying to look at the semantics of what's going on. But what you need to look at is, what is the truth there? Why did that strike a chord in you? What is the resonance that it's creating in you? Is it saying something that you agree with? Because if there is truth in that, even if somebody horrible said it, you can still absorb that truth without having to absorb everything else that they've done. And if they give you a gem of knowledge and you don't use it, they don't care. It's my loss. And again, as leaders, as teachers, what are we doing? I'm constantly trying to absorb things, because even if I can't use it, there may be somebody else that I'm talking to or teaching that needs it. And so I absorb that knowledge irrespective of source. I don't judge who it is. I just judge what that is. And if I run it through my filter, my philosophical and truth filter, and it makes sense, I don't care who said it. Because in the end, truth is universal. Guru Dana Santo, Bruce Lee's protege. I'm lucky enough to be an instructor under him. I'm humbled to learn from him. And he says something. He says, if I teach you a punch, you learn one punch. If I teach you a concept, I teach you 1,000 punches. And that's exactly what it is. It's about having this overarching knowledge and being able to apply it in any aspect of your life. And if you understand it well enough, you'll see all kinds of opportunities to apply the knowledge that we have, irrespective of source.
Yeah, there's a story I've not actually told on this podcast, but a great master who sits and has darshan every day with his inner circle. And he's in India and he's wrapped in his robes, and his number one protege is a Western man who sits at his feet every day for darshan for 10 years. And he looks around the room, the guru looks around the room, the master looks around the room, and he says to each of the students, have you learned anything from me? Oh, yes, master. You know, they say all the things, you know, what is the thing you learned? And they all go around, have you found what I've shared with you to be wise? Yes, master. Have you found it to be truth? Yes, master. And he says, would anything change that? No, master. So this is the truth no matter what. And they say, yes, master. And he pulls open his robe and reveals his arm that is tied off, and there's a heroin needle in it. And he says, now is what I've shared the truth. If I've been an addict for the 10 years you've been here. And that for me is the punch to exactly what you just talked about. Did it suddenly become a lie that had been a truth for 10 years because the man had a needle in his arm? No. But your judgment will say yes. Your ego will say yes. But the truth is the truth. And it is unwashable. It is what it is. And that's why I love what you're saying there. And I think it's so important. It's so vital. You know, Bill Cosby's humor is still funny. He's a rapist. It's still funny. I'm sorry. People will disagree with me that and say it's politically incorrect. Listen, my sense of humor doesn't have that filter. And I didn't know when he was making those jokes that he was a rapist. Do I condone raping? Absolutely not. It doesn't mean I condone something because I can take the value of it, right? I've read Mein Kampf. There are things in it I like, and I'm a Jew, right? There are things in it that I think, wow, that's really smart, right? There are things in each of the people I've read. Machiavelli's The Prince has brilliant stuff in it, but Machiavelli was a bit of an ass. You know, let's not be unrealistic about this. You know, I'm a huge fan of Martin Luther King. He also shagged a lot of women in the parishionery. You know what I mean? Gandhi was amazing, one of my heroes, but he was a terrible father. You know why? Because we are humans. And as humans, we are flawed. Moses killed an Egyptian before he ever led the Jews. David, who was handpicked by God to be king, saw Bathsheba and went, "Oh, that's some nice piece of ass. Let's send her husband to the front line, get him killed, because then I want some of that." Right? I mean, humanity. And I think this is one of the things we forget. And I think this is why we can't face adversity, is because we hold this bullshit ideal of perfection that we're supposed to be. And so when adversity hits us, we go, oh, I can't exist anymore. Because I can't hold the image, the frame of my perfection, as opposed to the truth of, here's who I am. I'm a human. I'm so flawed, but I'm doing the best I can, and I'll face the adversity because it is the wheel of life that polishes the diamond.
I couldn't agree more. That's beautifully said, and it is exactly the reality. And if we can see the opportunity in that, it's going to help us. And again, the micro adversities, the mindset shift, all the things we've been talking about, if they can even take a tenth of that knowledge right now and remember that when they are in the fray,
yes,
it will help them survive that. It will help them go through that. And then again, they will be stronger on the other side. But if you go through it and you have this idea that it's just oppressive and you don't want to do it, it's that resistance that stops us. Like we were talking about Weinhoff. I mean, he jumps in that water. When you resist and you shake, that's when you're going to be in trouble. But if you can try to breathe and try to balance and get in connection with that, that's when you have a much better chance to get through it. And that's where we can glean the most knowledge, not only from the situation, but the knowledge about ourselves. Like you said, about our ego. The thing that hurts us when we read that about somebody else or some knowledge from them is our ego, because now we're questioning ourselves and it's like, what kind of a person am I to agree with this? Take that out of that. That's not what this is about. It's not about you at all. It's about what is this knowledge? How do you apply it? And how can you help others with it? That's it.
When you're sitting down and you're coaching or you're working with companies, what are you confronted with that you're helping them to deal with?
The big thing that I do is I walk in and I look at the elephant in I observe, I look at what's going on, and I look at the elephant in the room. If you have CEOs, you have C-suite executives, you have middle management, you have people that are on the ground, they will dance around that elephant all day because that's what they do. And they're trying to get promoted, or they're trying to keep people happy. When I go in, I have no horse in the race. I just want them to win. I want to make them more efficient. So if I can point out that elephant, and now we can all lead it out of the room together, and we dam up the wall so it can never get back again, that's one of the big keys. And again, because I'm from the outside, I can say, I'm just on your bullshit and I kick in the ass when you're not doing the work. So if I say something and they don't take anything that I say, that's okay. I can leave. I don't have to be their friend. But as a coach, I'm not going to let them off the hook either. I want them to hit this level of excellence. And a kick in the ass is probably what most people need more than a handshake or a pat on the back.
Yeah, I'm with you. I believe in lovingly booting you in the ass if you need it. And I know that the people that I love, the people that really love me, they all wear boots too.
That's it.
You know, we all wear boots. We kick each other in the ass, but we're all able to hold each other and love each other. And I think that there's too much of one and not enough of the other. Like people are all mollycoddling everybody and, oh, you're wonderful, and here's a ribbon for getting out of bed this morning. Or on the other side, no, you get nothing unless you get gold, and you know you got 17 A's, but you got 1 B. Why did you get a B? You know, either of these polarities, as I said, I just think that polarity just blinds us to so much value that we can bring. As a leader, particularly as a conscious leader, and obviously you and I both know this, you're very committed to your growth. And as successful as you are, you know, coaching and working with great leaders in organizations, what's the one thing that you're still working on within yourself? Because you know there is no there.
Absolutely. I've had some people that will say, oh, well, you know, you've been through all this hardship. Everything's easy for you now, right? No. No. In some ways.
Have another drink and come back in the morning and talk to me.
Yeah. I mean, in some ways, because now everything is out there sort of on a stage, and my life is a book that you can read, it's almost harder because now I know what I'm capable of. Now I've had a taste, a glimpse, just a scratching of the surface. So I have, in my mind, I had this incredible responsibility to try to pass this on to other people. So now what? If I don't get a good night's sleep, am I going to not get up in the morning and, you know, meditate or exercise or get on this phone call or fly and do this engagement? No, I'm absolutely going to do it. I need to be that much more resolute in what I'm doing. And you and I were talking about it before. It's very easy at this level to get distracted because you want to help so many people, but we have to figure out what's the 80-20. What's this thing that I can do that's going to help the most people and make the most legitimate impact? And everybody uses the word impact, but impact is when you change somebody's behavior. If you want to give Dov or me any kind of the best compliment you could give us is not to send us an email, not to shake our hand and say you changed my life. Your best compliment could be to change your behavior for the better and impact the people around you and impact their life to where they change for the better. So if I never know who you are, but you do that, thank you. That's what I'm doing, I'm doing. That's why you're doing what you're doing. And that's why it's always a struggle, because there's always another level. Like you said, there's never a there. I talk about actualizing your potential, but our potential is always expanding.
Yeah.
So there's always room. There's always things I need to read. Your last book was amazing. And I'm still trying to make sure I digest that. And like you said, people read all these books. I don't read very many books because I want to put the knowledge that you've given me into play. Because because knowledge that is learned but not used is the equivalent of ignorance. So why would I do that?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm so with you. What brings Marcus Aurelius Anderson joy?
Seeing that I've actually made a difference for somebody. And again, they don't have to come up and tell me, but when you can see it, and it's interesting too, when we change somebody as coaches or as leaders, we can't tell them you need to do this. But again, that leadership component comes into it. So when you can do something, or maybe you just make a smattering example, all of a sudden in a week or two, you see that person acting differently and they're doing what you were talking about. And it seemed like it was almost their idea. That to me is brilliant leadership, because now it's not heavy-handed. I don't have to slam you in the face with it. I just do it over and over again. And eventually that becomes your standard of excellence. And eventually that's what you want to do. And eventually you do start doing that. So leadership is about influence. And if I can influence others to influence more in a positive capacity, that brings me great joy.
Fabulous. What's your guilty pleasure?
Guilty pleasure is I bag on Netflix, but sometimes just sitting back and not doing anything. Call it meditation, call it, asana, call it something where I just write out stuff that doesn't even make sense just to kind of get it out of my head. That's my big guilty pleasure, but I think it serves me in the end as well. So that may not be guilty enough, I guess.
It's not quite naughty enough.
Not easy enough. Yeah.
It needs a little naughtiness. So Marcus, we're coming to the end of the show here. It's been amazing, and I've loved having this conversation. You and I could certainly talk all day. We know that. Oh, yeah. So what I want is for you to give our viewers, our listeners, a practical piece of advice, something that they can go away, do preferably immediately, but certainly within the next few working days, they can put in action to integrate, because you and I talked about the lovely meanderings of philosophy, but what is it they can do to really get this?
What I give all of my clients is I give them 3 steps, and I'll do it real quick. The first step is be very cognizant of what you need to get done that day. So you know what your goals are, so you know what you should be doing. That's right. Pragmatic. The second thing is ask yourself right now, because if we get caught in between tasks, that's whenever there's that gray area, and that's whenever we can meander. So ask yourself right now, is what I'm doing right now getting me closer to my goal, or is it getting me further away? Because the reality in this life is there's very little lateral motion. You're either going forward or back. But the third thing, and I talk about it and I want to expand real fast on it, is to be present. And here's why. If you're a CEO, if you're a leader, if you're an entrepreneur, we have this thing in our head all the time. So if we're at work and I'm working 60 hours a week, there's that part of me that's like, man, I feel guilty that I'm not with my family. What that does subconsciously is that robs me from being able to be as efficient at work as I can be. And then if I finally get time away and I'm with the family and I'm sitting on the couch and I got the dogs and the kids and I'm sitting with my wife and we're watching some TV and it's some rom-com and it's mindless, in my mind, it would be easy for me to go, shit, I should be at the office. I should be following up with that email. I should be looking at this next prospect. And what that does is that robs me of the pleasure of that moment. So what you have to do is you have to be ruthlessly efficient and honest with yourself when you're working, and that will allow you to get more done. And if you actually use the first 2 steps I talked about and wring out all of your efficiency and make it all happen, now when you go and you're away from it, you can breathe, because you understand that there was nothing else you can do and that you're going to get more from having this emptiness and having this space, so that whenever you go back to work, you can redouble your efforts. And magically you will find out all my people that are working 60 hours a week, they're starting to work 50 hours a week now because they're more efficient. And now they enjoy the time that they have with their family more now. And now there is no resentment, there is no guilt, there's no anxiety. And that to me is something that people can use right now in this moment.
That's really great, fabulous, practical. Anybody can do it right now. Please tell our viewers, our listeners, where they can find out more about you and all the wonderful resources that you have in your book and etc.
Absolutely. They can just go to my website, marcusaureliusanderson.com. That's all one word. And you can find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn. I'm there all the time. And if you want to, you can send me messages, but if you really want to try to get a hold of me, going to the website, filling out, the form, if you want me to speak or to coach, that would be the best way to make sure I get it. Because as you and I both know, a lot of stuff can fall through the cracks with just messaging online.
Absolutely, yeah. And again, that's marcusaurelius.com. Marcus is Marcus. Aurelius is Aurelius. Anderson.com. MarcusAureliusAnderson.com. Of course, we'll put that in the show notes, but I want to make sure that you have it right now as you're listening into this, watching this, so that you can go right over there, because Marcus has some great resources. And like he said, just reach out to him, connect with the guy there. The one thing I will tell you about Marcus is he's a very accessible human being. He makes sure that he is available to you so that he can actually serve. It's something that we both have so much in common around, is that we're committed to serve, and I love that. Thank you, my friend. It has been an honor and a pleasure having you here. It's a wonderful conversation. You and I, as I said, we can talk for hours and hours, and we will, but just not in this recording. Nonetheless, thank you so much. I hope you'll stay with us to the end. Thank you for sharing everything that you've shared.
Thank you, my friend. I can't thank you enough.
Thank you. And for you, dear listener, remember, you can chat about this show or any of our previous shows by listening or past episodes by going over to Dov Brown Leadership Podcast on Facebook and go into that group there. You can chat about it. The research consistently shows that one of the biggest challenges facing companies today is somewhat counterintuitive, in that these fast-growing companies often hit a point where they realize that they're spending a fortune attracting, training, and developing their talent, only to have them leave at an alarming rate. If you're sick of spending and investing in your training and development only to have your talent leave you, well, far too fast, then come talk to us before you get your ROI. Come and talk to us at fullmontyleadership.com, where we provide you with the essential leadership skills to rekindle and amplify the hidden loyalty assets inside your organization by tapping into purpose. fullmontyleadership.com, providing the concrete soft skills to get you and your organization to the top and keep you there. Why? Because you can't outsource authenticity. Also, remember to stop by the Matrix. Go to Matrix, like the movie, matrix.fullmontyleadership.com. You don't need the www, just matrix.fullmontyleadership.com, and get your authentic leadership matrix self-assessment tool. It's valued at $197, and it will help you to see where the real strengths in your leadership are and where you really need to focus in the 5 areas that build an authentic leader. And again, you can find us on Alexa and Google Home by simply saying, play Dov Baron Podcast. I want to thank you for sharing the show with everybody you know. And until next time, I challenge you to stay curious, my friend. Stay curious about the adversity in front of you and how it may be your greatest opportunity. You might feel like a victim right now, but what if it's a gift? I know it might not feel that way. What if it's a gift? And if it's not a gift to you, what if it's a gift to someone else? I'm Dov Baron, and I'm here to assist you tapping into your deep greatness to reach that next level of clarity, focus, purpose, and profit in your business, your life, and your leadership impact. And I am out.